In the build-up to the 2024 election, Donald Trump has adopted an unusual and self-referential strategy, issuing cease and desist threats on social media, seemingly aimed as much at himself as at his political opposition. Trump's latest posts reveal an underlying sense of urgency and unease as he addresses early voting trends, which suggest Democratic favor in key states. His posts also express discontent with the legal scrutiny he and his supporters face over prior allegations of election interference. Against this backdrop, Trump has issued veiled threats to opponents and even alluded to his plans for sweeping power if reelected. This video unpacks the significance of Trump's self-directed messages, the implications of early voting data, and contrasts Trump's rhetoric with Vice President Kamala Harris's approach to policy and campaign strategy. Section 1. The landscape of early voting. What the numbers really say. This section introduces the concept of early voting in U.S. elections, discusses its increasing role, and analyzes data from the 2024 election. Example paragraphs. Early voting has become a prominent aspect of the American electoral system, with a record number of voters opting for early ballots in recent cycles. This trend is especially pronounced in key battleground states such as Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. As early voting rates rise, they reveal much about the current political climate and can even predict likely outcomes in states that are crucial to winning the presidency. A recent study by Marist Poll highlights some unexpected trends, where, despite a higher number of Republican early voters, a significant proportion of those votes appear to favor Democratic candidates. According to Marist Poll's findings, Vice President Kamala Harris holds a substantial lead in several pivotal states: Arizona, 55% to 44%, North Carolina, 55% to 43%, and Georgia, 54% to 45%. These results suggest that while Republicans are showing up in larger numbers than in previous early voting cycles, they are not necessarily casting their votes for Trump. Could these shifts represent a broader sentiment within the electorate, hinting that voters are wary of Trump's return? Section 2. Trump's cease and desist tactics, analyzing the panic and projection. This section analyzes Trump's social media posts, his repeated focus on cease and desist orders, and how this tactic reflects his stance on election integrity. Example paragraphs. In recent social media posts, Donald Trump has repeatedly issued cease and desist orders, a legal term typically used to halt harmful behavior or defamation. However, Trump's targets in these posts are ambiguously directed and include wide-ranging threats against illegal voters and corrupt election officials. The phrasing seems designed to instill fear in a general sense, while the tone suggests Trump's personal anxiety over voter patterns that may not favor his re-election bid. Legal experts and political analysts alike have observed that Trump's actions here mirror tactics used during his 2020 campaign, where rhetoric escalated into the events of January 6, 2021. The self-referential nature of Trump's cease and desist threats brings to light an intriguing psychological dimension. Trump appears to be projecting his unease outward. His language reflects a defensive posture, signaling a sense of diminishing control. Legal scholars have noted that these public threats, framed as warnings against voter fraud, may serve as a preemptive excuse for potential losses in November. Section 3. Comparative analysis. Trump's rhetoric versus Harris's policy platform. This section contrasts Trump's fear-driven messaging with Kamala Harris's policy-oriented posts, emphasizing their differing strategies and appeal to voters. Example paragraphs. While Trump's online posts are rife with accusations and alarmist warnings, Kamala Harris has maintained a different approach altogether, focusing instead on her administration's policy goals and promises to voters. Her recent statements highlight issues such as affordable housing, reproductive rights, and healthcare reform. For example, Harris's post about her late mother's journey to homeownership provided a personal touch while outlining a plan to address America's housing crisis by building 3 million new homes and providing $25,000 in down payment assistance to first-time buyers. This policy-focused narrative appeals to Americans struggling with rising housing costs, offering concrete solutions to issues affecting daily life. In a time when voters are increasingly frustrated with divisive politics, Harris's approach of proposing tangible improvements contrasts starkly with Trump's rhetoric of fear and punishment. This divide is reflected in polling data, with early voters appearing to gravitate towards Harris's promises of economic security, healthcare, and infrastructure expansion. Section 4. The Democratic Edge in Early Voting. This section provides an in-depth look at the history and trends of early voting, how it has generally favored Democrats, and why Republicans are showing up earlier in 2024. Example paragraphs. Traditionally, early voting has been a stronghold for Democrats, with Republicans historically preferring to vote in person on Election Day. However, 2024 has seen a shift, with an unprecedented number of Republicans casting ballots early. Some analysts attribute this to lingering concerns over Election Day disruptions, while others suggest it's a reaction to recent GOP calls for early voting to ensure election integrity. Data from early voters in states like North Carolina and Arizona indicates a surprising trend. Despite the higher Republican turnout, many of these votes are skewing Democratic. Marist Poll's recent study, as well as polling by the New York Times, supports this phenomenon, which has left Trump's camp concerned and, perhaps, triggered his recent cease and desist threats. Section 5. The threat of escalating rhetoric and Trump's push for authoritarianism. This section discusses the potential dangers of Trump's rhetoric, his comments about prosecuting opponents, and his apparent desire for expanded executive powers. Example paragraphs. Trump's language in recent weeks has been filled with implied threats and authoritarian overtones. He has spoken openly about prosecuting those who oppose him, including political opponents, legal professionals, and election officials who have pushed back against his claims of election fraud. These threats echo sentiments he voiced in 2020 and even suggest a potential repeat of the events surrounding January 6, 2021. By painting his political opponents as criminals and traitors, Trump sets a dangerous precedent and stokes fears of escalating political violence. Legal scholars argue that Trump's comments about professional scrutiny and prosecuting illegal voters reveal his intent to reshape the justice system into a tool for partisan retribution. This shift toward authoritarianism, if left unchecked, could destabilize democratic norms, eroding faith in free and fair elections. In conclusion, the upcoming election represents more than a political contest. It is a referendum on the future of American democracy. Trump's choice to issue veiled threats and emphasize cease and desist orders, even as early voting data suggests a competitive race, is emblematic of his broader strategy. For Trump, the 2024 election is not merely about winning, but about redefining the boundaries of executive power. In contrast, Kamala Harris has maintained a platform focused on policy, demonstrating a commitment to addressing pressing national issues. As voters continue to cast their ballots in unprecedented numbers, the choice becomes clearer: a candidate who seeks to lead through promises of prosperity and reform, or one who doubles down on fear, threats, and authoritarian ambitions. The outcome will likely shape the country's direction for generations to come, underscoring the importance of each vote in securing the future of American democracy.